Okay, so I mainly want to talk about, is solo queue worth it, right? Because I know a lot of people have different ideas, people have different opinions of, is playing through solo queue X rank worth it, right? Like at what point is it just not worth my time, either because hey, teammates are not playing to the same skill I am. Maybe there's moments where team comps are a little wonky. I know X rank tries to build a decent comp, but there are moments where like that in itself is a little wonky. For example, like you'll see moments where if you play X, like, here, both teams have double, like there's three dreads in a lobby. You know what I mean? Like at some point you kind of ask yourself the question, oh, is it worth, like, is it worth it to play X when team comps and lobbies are like this? And I still think the answer is yes. I think a lot of times we, as a community, as players, argue kind of against X rank because we try to be team players. We try to be players that play in a group setting, and then very much like, because Splatoon competitive comp is played as a team. And if you play weapons that are like more backline heavy, that are more like, hey, you kind of have to play to some extent around your team, it could feel like playing solo is bad because like solo won't help you to learn that, which I can understand that argument. I completely can get that argument. But I guess as someone who went from like not enjoying X at all, like just not really playing it, to like I most of the times play it if I like the rotation, and like if it's zones, I'll try to play it. I think it helps. I think there's a lot of caveat, and I think it's worth it. Either because you get to just sit down and grind your weapon and mechanically push yourself in Splatoon, because like Splatoon to some extent is game knowledge and like understanding like where you should be standing, how to pop, like where you should pop your specials to get value out of it. But also part of it is at the same time like mechanics. Like it is, hey, I'm trying to stress my mechanics so that if I ever end up in a similar situation, either on the same map or against opponents of similar skill, I can stress my mechanics and like kind of outperform somebody. And what I mean by mechanics, I mean like I'm able to sit here and like, play my weapon better than somebody else can, and win because of that. And so I think like a lot of times in a team environment, you don't necessarily push yourself mechanically all the time as you could in a solo queue environment where you're forced to kind of like play solo queue. Um, I've been playing bucket lately, and like I'll lose. Like there's a ton of games where I'll lose. This was during a tournament, but there's moments where I'll lose, and I'll be like, oh damn, we lost. But then like in solo queue, it's like there are moments where it's like, hey, it might be actually worth it to just sit down for a bit and play solo queue, just to either gain experience and get better at playing the weapon, playing certain matchups against certain weapons, or and just getting more used to it. Even if like you are playing X and you're getting like 2,000 power, or you're getting like less than 2,500 power, it's still worth it. There's always something to learn. There's always something to strive for. If you got 2,400 this season, maybe next season you try for 2,500. 2,600, 27, et cetera, et cetera. You keep trying, you keep pushing yourself to climb, and you don't have to like always play solo, but playing solo helps you kind of like understand the maps and understand like an environment better without like, because a lot of times when you play competitive, if you just only play comp, there's going to be moments where you as a player not get caught lacking, but as a player you don't really are forced to learn and stress your understanding of like, and test your understanding of the map, of how to play the weapons, of how to play comps. You pretty much can to some extent get like piggybacked by your teammates, which is a good thing, that's how it should be. But to some other extent, it's like, hey, you don't necessarily have to learn how to play the game. You don't really force yourself to like, understand where to position yourself, what you have to do to win, things like that. And to that, like, there's moments where it's like, can solo queue give you bad habits? 100%. Solo queue can give you bad habits. But is solo queue overall a better thing to just avoid? I don't think so. I think it's good to play solo queue. Whether it's X rank NA, the Tenatech region, or if you're playing like X rank, like the quote unquote JP region of of Tokoroka, I think it's called. it's still worth it. Like, even like I sit down and I've played X and I've gotten 2700 JPX zones, right? And I've gone, cool, like I've gotten this. But at the same time, like an NA, I'm pushing myself at the moment for 3K. Will I get it? Maybe. Well, you know, there's a chance where I might fail. But like a large part of it is just stressing mechanics and trying your hardest to like push yourself. And I think solo queue gets, not a lot of players play solo queue. Not a lot of players push themselves in a solo queue environment like they should. Because there's moments where it's like, if you just push yourself in solo queue, even if it's zones, even if there's cheese in zones with like strikes, reef slide, fighting that constantly to some extent helps you like get better at like just knowing what to do against it, knowing how to counter it, how to fight against zone cheese. If you're a backline player, sometimes not having the perfect teammates and having teammates that force you to kind of like play more forward or more aggressive than you would usually used to, and kind of need to like adapt, kind of puts you in a position where like you get better at getting used to adapting to what's going on in the game. You get better at, you know, repositioning and playing the map and the angles better. That way, like, even if you're a Charger player, you can try to make the most of what is going on, even if your teammates are feeding repeatedly. There's like, you know, for every player that has carried, you know, using like a really aggro weapon and gotten like, you know, Melon got 5,000 with 52, there's other players that have gotten 3K, 4K, and have pushed themselves using backline weapons, using support weapons, using other weapons, using a ton of weapons that aren't just necessarily the run-of-the-mill, you win if you play X, you can only get good results in X if you play you know, aggro weapons. You can play, you know, BP, you can play Squeezer, you can play you know, Leader, you can play other weapons that aren't necessarily typically frontline weapons and still succeed in X rank. And pushing yourself to kind of like understand mechanics better and understand game sense better, because, you know, there's a situation where it's like, you know, in X there's no comms, but you have to force yourself to get better at understanding map geometry and understanding certain, like, how positionally how people are going to fight. You know, there's going to be moments where you sit down and you're kind of like, oh, hey, I'm like playing against these people and these people keep, you know, this certain player, or like I notice that the bucket keeps playing this angle and keeps punishing me because I try to go this angle. Like right here, I get punished by reef slide. Okay. In the future, I need to be more cautious and wary of like reef slide, because if they reef slide us in spawn, there's a good chance I'm going to die, right? And I just need to like play smarter, right? And so solo queue kind of forces you to understand those moments better and kind of like recognize moments where it's like, hey, sometimes like here, you just, in order to win, all you got to do is like build strikes and play for strikes. We build strikes, we pop bubble, we are able to get a lot of space, but it's like a stressing of mechanics, awareness, and honestly checking yourself. And I think X is a good way to teach yourself how to get better at the game and not necessarily be carried by like your teammates. It's a lot of times in competitive, you can do really well and feel like, well, we're doing really well, we're winning, and not feel like you're mechanically performing, which is understandable, that happens. But there's moments where it's like being able to sit down and play, you know, stress mechanics and play the game really, really well allows you to, for the most part, learn how to play the game at a different level than you would have if you just sat down and didn't play the game with your teammates. You know, like if your teammates sat down and just helped you win the game, great. But at some point, it's like, when are you really putting yourself in an environment where you can't just rely on your other teammate to get 3 kills consistently every game, or consistently wait on like your teammates to have the perfect gameplay? You know, there's moments where it's like we try to play perfect, but sometimes you just gotta adapt. You just gotta play to what is going on screen and play to what your opponent's doing and your teammates are doing. And I think solo queue helps teach that very much. Even if you're playing NAX, even if you're playing JPX, I don't think necessarily it's not worth it to play X rank. I think NAX, even if it's NAX and it gets like a bad rep or there's like the skill levels lower mechanically, it's still worth it to try. Like, it's still good practice. You know, if you feel like the skill level is really low and you yourself are just outperforming people, then cool. Like, then get a high XP, you know, push yourself for a higher XP. If the high XP you have pushed yourself, you've gotten, and you just are bored of it and you kind of want a challenge and you want to push yourself even more, no problem. You know, pick the JP region, pick Takaroka. And really like try to force yourself to learn matchups, you know, really force yourself to stress your mechanics, because like it might be simple to queue into a game and be like, well, damn, we're losing because my teammates just weren't doing anything. But it's like some games, it very much is your opponents were playing better than you, and you need to figure out how to stop your opponent from like playing the game better than you were playing the game. And that, you know, could be difficult to do because it's not, you know, no one is there to really like hold your hand through an X rank game. Sometimes you have to very much carry yourself. And that's just to say, I think X rank is worth it. And I think more players should play X. Even if the maps are bad, even if the comps you're getting are bad, sometimes it's worth it to just sit down and grind X and really push yourself in X, than to sit down and pretend like, well, X isn't worth it because, you know, I'm just not getting the best teammates, and I'm not like playing, and teammates I'm playing with just aren't playing the greatest, or people are just throwing matches. It's like, it's normal. There's a ton of matches I've lost where I've gone really high KDs and my teammates have gone low KDs, and I'm like, damn, and we lose the match. But there's moments where it's like, hey, that happens. No problem. You know, GG, go next, try again. There's moments where like I have played average and my whole team plays average, but someone on the enemy team drops a 20, and they just carry, and that happens. And it's like, I should have been my job to stop them, and I should have gotten better at winning those fights against that player to prevent them from getting a 20 bomb. But that's just to say, I think X is worth it. I think you should grind more solo queue. I think solo queue should be grinded more. Also, so the queue times go down and more people play X, so then it's easier to find games. But that's just me. So yeah, go play X. Have fun.